Okay, Assalamu alaikum, Faisal, Assalamu alaikum, all our viewers. I hope everybody is well. This is Hafsa. I have Faisal Saab with me, and our colleague Salman is running a little late. He's stuck on the road and he will be joining us very, very shortly. So, again, I welcome you all to this third webinar of the Retail Reset. And let's just recap where we were and why what we're going to talk about today. So the retail reset, as we talked about in the first two episodes or two webinars, is that all three of us, being retail bankers in our previous lives, have retail very close to our heart, and just taking stock of where the retail banking is in Pakistan primarily. We put our heads together and we said, okay, there is an issue, right? So there are numerous opportunities. Retail banking could be growing in multiples, but something is holding it back. It's not really booming as the way it is in other markets, and we filtered it into three pillars, let's say. And so we said that, okay, there are many areas or many challenges, and if we filter it or if we narrow it rather, they all fall into either it being a issue with portfolio, which we discussed last time, or processes that we're going to discuss today. And of course, there's something, a common thread that ties the processes and the portfolio together, which is the third P, which is people. So we talked a little bit about portfolio, and I'll just give a recap of what what registered with me, and I'll ask Faisal to do that before Salman comes as well. So last time we had a great discussion on portfolio. Again, what is the definition of a healthy portfolio and compared to a diseased portfolio? What do we need to do? And we talked about, and Salman and Faisal, especially Salman, talked a lot about from his business angle, about portfolio, about it being very centric, about the risks associated with portfolios, about the 80-20 rule, and all of that. So, Faisal, do you want to share a little bit about what we did in the last webinar related to portfolio before we turn to processes, please? And again, welcome from Canada to Faisal.
Thank you very much, Hafsa. Yeah, I think we had a very interesting and insightful discussion last time round about portfolio, and I think the one thing or the one key takeaway from that discussion that came again and again was the centrality of the customers. Okay, in everything that we do, whether it is portfolio or whether it is any other aspect of retail banking in particular and banking at large. Of course, the customer experience is absolutely important. And Salman alluded to the fact that the relationship managers in the current scenario in most of the banks, as he has seen from his own experience and through his consultancy assignments as well, is that the relationship managers are too much bogged down with the product and services aspects, and their KPIs or goals, they are also tied to how much business, whether it is deposits or loans or any other product or service, how much do they bring in. But the engagement with the customer is not to the level it should be. It is not to the optimal level that can bring in more revenues, not only from the new customers but from the existing, as you said, existing to bank ETB customers as well. So that needs creativity in how you engage with the customers. So that was one very clear message. And then we also talked about, and we had some questions also from the audience. And the view that actually came very loud and clear was that the relationship managers are too much bogged down in these service issues. Okay, so we have to find out the ways and means to basically, if not completely relieve them from that responsibility, to lessen that burden, which should actually be taken on by the customer service people or by the operation people, so that the RMs, the relationship managers, can free up their time for the business development and customer engagement activities. Then we also touched upon the need for customer service. I mean, again, that basically pertains to the customers. Customer is again in focus. So, how do we actually improve the customer experience, whether it is through a service quality plan, or whether it is through the let's say development of the people, you know, the relationship managers. So these, I think, were some of the factors that we discussed. And then I think there was, if I remember correctly, a brief discussion about the channels as well. Okay, we have, of course, branch is still a very important distribution channel in Pakistan, but adjacent to the branches as the distribution channels, we now have digital banking also,
Digital.
which is emerging very fastly in Pakistan. So we also touched briefly on that. So these are some of the main points from
Thank you,
last.
Faisal. And sorry, thank you. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you brought in and you again spoke about customer centricity and the customer experience a lot. Because today, what we're going to talk about, the process is, I think that's the heart of it all, right? So, at the heart of it all, any process that we design to, again, and we talked about, needs to keep three elements in mind. So, one, we have the customer, of course. Then again, if the process we is designing is also from the point of view of making life easy for either the customer or the employee, and also again the biggest is the shareholder. So any process that the retail bank, when we, because again our focus is on retail bank is doing it, needs to have customers at the heart of it. And that is what the new concept, not so new overall, but in Pakistan relatively new, the design thinking concept, which starts with keeping the customer at the heart of designing any process. So it starts with the need of, by understanding the need of the customer, and it goes very hand in hand with the discussion we had on portfolio, which is that our branch managers, our relationship managers, they need to actually be trained. They are trained, but again more on the relationship building, the emotional connect, the know your customer, not just on paper but actually establishing that connection in knowing the needs of the customer. And then the processes can be designed accordingly. So a lot of times, I have seen, let's say, in one of the previous organizations, account opening form was a 12-page form. 12-page form. Okay. So yes, that somebody must have designed that process, right? To me it's a process of opening up an account. But to me, if I open an account and if I have to go through 12 pages of laborious filling in information, I would at times, maybe halfway, knowing me, I think halfway I would say, forget it, I'm better off not opening this account. So this is just very one small example of it. Not really, I'm not saying all that information is not required, but I think we need to me, it is a matter of what is a must have, what is good to have, and what is important. I think over there, from a customer's lens, we don't look at it. Yes, of course, compliance is there, we have to follow the regulations, but what can we do? So I think we also need to uh, again, I'm encroaching into the people space as well, but we want our relationship managers, our branch managers, our operations, our tellers to keep challenging the processes, don't you think? To say that, okay, why can we make it better? Why does it have to be 12 pages? Why don't we do that, vessel? Why do we just keep along with that 12-page document historically and just saying, bas aisa hi hota hai, this is how it
Actually,
is?
yeah, I mean, why does it happen, and why does it? I mean, why doesn't improvement not happen? There could be various reasons for it. Uh, One of the reasons, of course, is that everybody is comfortable in their respective shells or cocoons, and they have a feeling that this is the best way of doing things and we can't do anything more, and why do anything more, so there is no motivation for them. uh, Secondly, I would say that sometimes employees are not really empowered to actually okay, I think Salman Butt was there. But let me, okay, Salman, maybe you can start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
You can continue.
Basically, so I think there is resistance to change, there is the comfort factor, and thirdly, as I said, that there is some sort of self-centric kind of sentiment as well, due to which improvements are not suggested. Okay. Um, but you're absolutely right. I mean, there is a concept called continuous improvement, which is used and which is sometimes also known as Kaizen. It's a Japanese term and it translates exactly into continuous improvement, where you make some incremental improvement, where you challenge the processes, okay, and try to make them as efficient as possible as well. And when we talk about processes, you talked about, I think, three elements, and out of which I would say that customer centricity, or the focus on the customer, is probably most important. So I would also like to maybe enlist some other, points. In my opinion, there should be five uh, pillars or guiding principles for processes. Okay, one, of course, is efficiency. Okay, in terms of cost benefits. Second is understandability, because if you have complicated processes, the users of those processes will not be able to do a good job at them. Thirdly is the controls, okay, so that you can manage the operational risk. Then fourthly, but not in that order, I think customer centricity, as you also said, and I would reiterate that you have to empathize with the customer and see how his or her needs are being met. Okay, and so that's about continuous improvement, and that's basically the four, or maybe five guiding principles for the processes.
Thank
So
you.
I'll talk more about it, but now let's have Salman Bhatt, so that we
Yes.
can.
So, welcome, Salman. And we were just talking about why the processes, if they are not customers. I was just telling Faisal, I said, let's give it a Actually, it's an actual example of a certain bank which has a 12-page account opening form. So, I was just telling Faisal, I said, from a customer's perspective, is that customer friendly? Is that a good process to have? And why don't we challenge it? Why doesn't the relationship manager, the branch manager, whatever, why do we just put in all the elements over there that is required? And why so it's the mindset of bringing in a new change. Why doesn't somebody ask? And just a very small story which is related to it. There was um, a husband whose wife was making a roast, and when he came, he saw that she cut the leg of the roast and she put it in the oven. So he just asked, he said, why did you cut the leg off? She said, I don't know, my mother always did that, so I done it. He said, okay, let's call up your mother. So he called up the mother and she said, you know what, why do you? She said, I don't know. My mother always used to do it. So it went on to the grandmother, great grandmother. So when the great grandmother got the phone and she said, why did you cut off the? She said, okay, in our times, the ovens were small, the whole roast could not fit in, so we had to cut it off. So this is exactly the same thing. So we don't challenge, it's just that because historically a process is being followed, so nobody really thinks about it and says, is it really working? So that is what we were talking about from the process, and so far we've just tried to link in what we talked about portfolio. And today we're talking about processes from the point of view of the customer, the employee, and of course the shareholder. So that is where we are right now. And again, so I would ask you, Salman, is that if you were to be asked, okay, so as far as what is the most important or the number one process for a retail bank, what you're talking about, the branches primarily, to focus on as a first step, what would that be?
Hafsa, thank you, and I'm sorry I was late. There was chock-a-block traffic outside, and
It's okay.
my apologies. Anyways, very interesting. I think what I would, I would rather answer that question in this way. I think the, the retail business is about many customers. In some cases, millions. In some cases, thousands, hundreds of thousands. Um, Unless you have structure to the way you deliver business, develop business, deliver business, deliver products and services, unless you have structure in that approach, and the structure is well thought through, um, with the objective, that at the end of the day, um, you are providing world class service to your customers. um, if you have that thought process, then you're heading in the right direction. And yes, we are a bank. We deal with financials, etc. And therefore, risk needs to be mitigated, and in everything that we do, we need to have processes that mitigate risk, secure the customers, um, you know, um, financial wealth with us, and at the same time ensures that we are providing them world class service. So for that, you cannot have an ad hoc approach. You have to have a structured approach. You were talking about account opening. Um, why should it be that a BM or a staff member raises this issue in today's day and age, in a bank? This should not be even but it is. Um, this should be the concern of people who are uh, running the business, who are who are putting the vision, the strategy in place. They should be the people who should be asking these questions on a regular basis. Are we competitive? Are we, mark to market? Are we right up there when it comes to delivering products and services? Where are we lacking? Uh, and even before that, do we have a process? Do we have processes to manage the business that we do with our customers? And if we do, then it's simply about going back to those processes and seeing, okay, how do we refine them, modify them, to upgrade ourselves at times to come up to speed with the market, and at times to be able to, um, go beyond and be market leaders. So my answer to that would be structure is very important. And when we talk about processes, I think in my mind we're talking about um, processes delivered in a particular structure, a framework, right? A framework. Then, again, like Faisal was touching on a few things. In my mind, these have to do with business development. Do you have a process for, even before business development? Do you have a process for business planning? How do you plan for business growth? How do you identify customer segments? Do you continuously identify customer segments and their changing needs? What's the process for that? How do you um, um, ensure? How do you assess what products and services meet these customer needs? How do you continuously assess? How do you refine these products and services to be able to meet those customer needs? It shouldn't be ad hoc. It shouldn't be, um, uh, you know, some one day somebody thinks, oh well, we're falling behind the market. We need to do something about this or that. That's not the way to look at it. It needs to be an ongoing. So business, for example, business planning is an ongoing process, and it includes all these things that I'm talking about. Um, then, you talked about branch banking. Is there a process? Is there a structure on how you set up a branch? Um, what of all the services that will be in the branch, but at the same time, how do you capacitize the branch to deliver customer centric service, to build relationships, and at the same time to deliver high quality turnaround times. Um, So is there a method to this thing? There has to be a method to it. You have to ensure proper capacitization, capability. How do you split portfolios? Things like that. And then, if I may come to my third, I also have four. So my third approach would be, how do you put goals and KPIs in place? So goals and KPIs in job descriptions drive customer behaviors. What's the thought process behind putting goals and KPIs in place? I mean, if I want relationship building, have I got goals and KPIs that are intrinsic, will drive that behavior when the rubber hits the road? Um, if my goals and KPIs are not developed or structured in that way, for example, if I just give if I just give goals of product volume growth, just that, then then I'll find probably people will just go and give me product volumes, but they may not be good quality service delivered. At the same time, they may not be that engagement or relationship. The industry, we all know, has become a one product sale industry. It is not a relationship based industry. For that, KPIs need to be designed in a particular way. So that's also part of the process. Um, then I come to service quality management. I mean, how do we? Is there a process? Is there service quality management programs put in place? And by the way, in most banks there are. And we've got our one of our colleagues, Charlene here, who's been doing service quality for us when we were working together, and now I think she manages the same. She's um, uh, right here with us and commenting as well. But are we linking service quality to repeat sales and referrals? Are we linking service quality and laser sharpening it to the right places? For example, if I were to ask people, you know, do you do net promoter score or customer loyalty scores? Generally, people will tell me, yes, we do that. Everyone does net promoter score. But then if I ask them, okay, how does net promoter score link back to business development? And I won't find an answer for that, right? But it does. It is a very critical piece of business development. Your promoters are the people who are actually giving you repeat business and referrals. But have we structured this entire approach in a way that is optimal to business development, to customer experience, and at the same time, to the return on equity for our shareholders? So, these are the sort of things that we need to think about and put the right sort of framework in place that is in line with our strategy, the strategy of the bank. I'm sorry I take up a lot of time answering questions, but
No,
Hafsa,
no, I
that is
think
my
that's fine.
core.
I think that's fine, and thank you for that. And if I recap what you've just said and put it into succinct, so you talked about the first is business planning. I think that was the first, that every bank, every branch should have a business plan, and that plan should be focused on different customer segments. So by customer segments, if you mean, so if there should be a plan for how do you solicit and how do you manage and how do you retain your existing to the bank clients, then there is another plan for new to bank clients, and also for those who are walk-ins. So I think that is what you alluded to. So there should be a specific plan. Is there a plan in place, or
Okay.
is just one plan cuts across?
Yes,
So
I'll just make one comment there. And
yes.
why are we saying plan? Generally, if you go into retail banks and you ask them, do you have a plan for existing to bank customers? I can tell you 9 out of 10 times banks don't believe actually that existing customers can give them more business. But at the end of the day, when you work on it with them, they themselves find that, wow, we have much more business that we can get from existing customers than for new customers. So do you have a plan for that? You generally don't find that. At the same time, when you ask them, do you have a plan for new to bank customers? and they generally do. They say, well, we're going to open 60 accounts in our branches per month, new to bank. But then when you ask them, well, okay, where are these 60 accounts coming from? How many of these accounts are going to give you business? And you'll be amazed that not even 1% of those accounts that come in actually give business. It's less than 1% of the new to bank accounts that come in that actually give business to the branch. But everyone's just kind of going along that kind of, you know, if somebody else is doing it, I'll do it, right? Not really analyzing and seeing, well, there are different ways of doing this that are more efficient. And there is a lot of inefficiency right now built into our retail banking businesses that I've seen. So sorry, yes,
Okay, no
ETB,
problem.
NTB planning is this is,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
one more if I may add, walk-in customer. You know, हम basically ये कहते हैं कि जो दिखता है वो बिकता है, right? And that's a fact. Whatever you see, you land up eventually. You land if it interests you, you land up buying it. I generally ask people, you know, इम्तियाज स्टोर जाते हैं, डॉलमन मॉल आप जाते हैं, जो सोच के जाते हैं क्या वही खरीद के लेके आते हैं, you know, आप उससे ज्यादा खरीद के लेके आए. And then the reason for that is that you can see products and services in front of you. We have so many walk-in customers coming into a branch. Is there a structured approach to be able to offer these customers products and services every day so that a certain percentage will land up buying? Um, and you know, these sorts of thought processes need to be looked at, talked about, structured into the business so that the business is able to, you know, sort of work efficiently.
Okay, thank you. So we have business planning as the first, and in that we talked about NTB, ETB, and of course walk-in clients. The second thing that you mentioned very important was the branch setup, right? And you talked about it being efficient. And also, I would add is that, you know, what does the customer feel? Does he feel welcome when he walks into a branch, or he feels alienated? So it also has to do with the setup of the branch. Is there somebody there to greet him or her when he or she enters, and how is that carried down? There is a science behind it, of course. You know, again, there is a lot of banks have, and they've got it right as well. Some of them have got completely the branch structure or the branch setup, if I may. And they've spent a lot of time in doing that. It just didn't happen overnight, right? So they studied it. You know, they had some scientific evaluation and said, and again, I feel they also must have gotten customer insights. So they must have asked customers, if you walk into the branch, how would you want the branch to be laid out? And some of them have got it right, and some of them, when you walk into a branch, people are going like, if I walk into a branch, I don't know where to go to, I am not guided, so it's not the navigation is not easy. So I think that is the second thing, is that the process is how to make it easy, seamless, and friendly. Even the branch, not just the setup, the ambience. Somebody is there to just, you know, on a hot day, just greet them, offer them a glass of water, doesn't cost too much. But again, process, even if there is a process that every customer entering the branch should be asked or offered without even asking a glass of water, it's a process, right? You just build that in, and doesn't cost you, you know, too much, but it differentiates you from there, so you're taking care of the customer. So that is another thing. And also you talked about then KPIs, that meaning, and the KPIs, I'm just trying to, you know,
Yeah.
again, distill it. So you talked about KPIs, that again, our KPIs are not really relationship oriented, they are more product oriented. And that is again where there is a mismatch between, if you want to go and do relational or relationship selling, and there are no KPIs, so again, what gets measured gets done. That is as the simple rule of law, right? So if you want to get change behaviors, you need to measure and then reward, not just measure, reward. Again, then, so you talked about KPIs, and then you talked about SQ, service quality, again, and so you talked about service quality. And I think now my question to either you or Faisal is now, we're talking about a lot of processes. We're talking about business planning, service quality, KPIs. So, who is responsible for developing these processes? Is there
I
one
think
person? Ji
I'll
Faisal.
let Faisal have a go at that.
Ji.
Okay, thank you, Salman and Hafsa. Yeah, that's a very interesting question and a very pertinent one too. That who is actually supposed to make or develop these processes? I would say that when it comes to transactional processes, as opposed to some of the processes that Salman has just talked about, he talked about the planning from the point of view of business development, more importantly. But when it comes to transactional processes, then I would say that it's not just one department or one person or one function that is responsible for it. I mean, just continuing from your example, Hafsa, about account opening, function, and you mentioned about the account opening documentation or the form. Now, if you look at this process, as a chain of, let's say, steps or links, then this thing, account opening actually originates from the relationship manager. Okay, so some part of the process has to reside with the relationship manager, and then of course the account opening in the system, it is basically farmed out to somebody in operations. Okay, so they basically input the information and so on and so forth, and in between there is also the KYC process, which, as the first line of defense, the relationship manager or the business is responsible. Okay, operations obviously supports in that effort, and if it is a high risk kind of account, then compliance also gets involved. Okay, so what I mean to say is that there is not just one person to do that. And in today's day and age, actually, you should not be looking at one process owner for each of the processes. It's not just one department, as I said, and I can't emphasize that point enough. So basically, it has to be a multidisciplinary effort. Okay, and I would also like to introduce a concept of RACI. Some of you might have heard about it, and for those who have not, basically it just stands for responsibility, accountability, C for consulting, okay, and I for information. So if there is any activity that is going on, including the process development or the process design activity, then while you can ask a particular department or a team of persons, okay, from various departments to basically come up with the processes, you have to actually also at various steps assign some accountability, that if the process is done wrongly, then who is going to be accountable for that part of the processes. Okay, and then of course, I mean, consultation with all the stakeholders, okay, that's important. And sometimes you just need to inform somebody, you need to take somebody into the loop, and if that person or function wants to add some value, of course, I mean, they can do that. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you. So my next follow-up question would be, so a lot of banks and organizations have a department called BPR, or a head of BPR, which is business process re-engineering. But that also, to me, is a very myopic view of looking at process changes, right? Because there is a department and they're saying, okay, now which process should we take? And now what should we do to re engineer? They're not thinking outside in, they're still thinking inside out, I feel. So, what we are saying is that, or are we saying that a better approach is, yes, you have a business process re engineering department or whatever, but instead of that department just being a siloed department, it should be a cross-functional department, which brings me to the concept of agile teams, right? So we have Scrum and we have teams, and so the concept of agile is, again, you have a problem and then you have the respective people come together from different areas. So even if it is, let's say, account opening, again, so there could be from compliance, from service quality, from the front end, from operations, from everybody together, with a different lens, because everybody has a different lens, and each lens is correct in its own way. We are not saying compliance is wrong, and everybody has a say, but somebody has to basically get them all together, and then also put on the cap of the proverbial customer. So
Yeah.
again, that yes, compliance, you're right, service quality is right, but now if I am the customer, now how would I react to that? So do you think that is a better way of doing it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Hafsa. Firstly, I would like to say that the BPR, or the business process reengineering exercise, is not basically done on a day-to-day or
Hmm.
routine basis. I mean, it has to result in some dramatic improvement, and it has to be something radical. And while, I mean, different banks may have a different kind of structure for such exercises or functions, I would like to say here that it is actually, again, a multidisciplinary kind of exercise. And if you look at the principles of BPR, identification of the customer's needs, empathizing with the customer is, I mean, again, at the heart of
Heart.
the BPR philosophy. I mean, just for those who are interested, there is a book on business process reengineering, and I think it was quite a groundbreaking book, and it is still, used as a reference book, which is Reengineering the Corporation by Hammer and Champy. So it is still used in some of the BPR programs. Now, one of the I mean, just to add to your point, one of the important ingredients of any BPR exercise is that you must involve not only, let's say, the let's say, if it is a BPR which relates to, let's say, cash department, for instance, it should not only be the cash department people who should be involved in this exercise. In fact, you should have people from departments which are even unrelated to it, okay, because they can bring in fresh ideas, because the guy or the people in the cash department, they are basically sort of hooked on to or addicted to their processes, and somebody has to challenge those processes. Okay, so I mean, I can basically quote one or two simple examples from my previous experience, like in ABN AMRO Bank. We did basically a BPR exercise in the cash department, which resulted in some empowerment of the tellers. We gave them single authorizations, and we also created some new windows as well in the cash department. Uh, so one of the reasons for success of that exercise was that we had involved other departments, including the business people as well. So, I mean, we were able to, in operations or in cash, better understand the customer needs. The purpose of having a BPR department is basically just to and coordinate the effort. Okay, it's not that they are the only ones who are responsible for that. And for each project, obviously, they have to form a new team. They have to go to the different stakeholders, different functions, and get their inputs. And I would like to say that one of the important ingredients of any PPR exercise, or even a continuous improvement exercise, which is basically incremental improvement as opposed to BPR, which is radical improvements. And as we're talking about retail reset, that becomes important. So basically, in any of these efforts, a multifunctional effort is absolutely important, and that is what I want to stress upon.
Thank you. So we are getting some interesting questions. I'd like to first welcome Vakar. He's our, let's say, a die-hard, audience member. So thank you, Vakar, for tuning in again. Thank you very much. And he has two questions. Customer portfolio is an asset for a bank. Why banks are not investing heavily in training all front-end staff? And a related question, Vakar, has a follow up question, is that what is the role of Green Peak International in creating the awareness among the financial institutions? So our humble,
Yeah,
one
I
of
think
our,
you
and
should
I'll
take
ask
the
him,
first question. No, no, I
I,
think you should take the first question yourself.
Yeah,
You
so
go
I'm
ahead.
just saying that the both are related in the sense that this series of webinars, Vakar, is our humble attempt at creating or the awareness in the financial institutions. And trust me, the awareness is there. We just have to bring it top of mind. I
Hmm.
think deep down everybody knows that this is the right thing to do. I don't believe that they don't. I really don't believe that they don't. It is difficult, it is cumbersome, and it is a little, let's say, it's not instant gratification. It takes a long time to materialize. And in this day of instant gratification, it is abhi ho jaye, jaldi ho jaye. Abhi, if I start training and building, it's going to give me return, but in the long term. So this is also where the reset is required. कि at times हमें long term gains का सोचना चाहिए, and at the cost of short term gains as well. But that's another conversation altogether. So again, Green Peak International, I'll let Salman take over that, and then I would also like to address Ataur Rahman's question on ETBs. He gets it, so that's great. G.
Right.
So first Vakar, yes.
Um, Wakad, this is a good question. This, for example, this webinar is, like Hafsa said, one attempt at creating awareness. Uh, Green Peak it chooses right now to focus on the retail banking business and create awareness around that. We do it through webinars such as this. We're going to be doing some other stuff going forward as well to involve management of various organizations, retail management, and bring them to a table, hopefully, to start talking about the retail business and the opportunities and the reset required. We also do workshops related specifically to business, and uh, they have to do they're related to business. But when I say business, I mean related to risk, the business of risk, portfolio, people, process, risk management, all of that, but all related to it. So we're very focused around that. So workshops also help in creating that awareness. So yes, we're doing our little bit to do that, to bring some sort of impact, and hopefully we'll continue to do that and see the impact as we move forward. Um, so that's my answer. Afzal, Najib also has a question, probably for, but Ata, we'll go to Ata first, and then Najib has a
Then to
comment, and
Najib.
I'd like Faisal to, to take
Sure.
that comment. So Ata says this is a very informative session. Cost of ETBs is far lower than the cost of onboarding NTBs. Just need to provide seamless customer service, as we don't need to introduce the institution to them. And one part of customer journey is already there, that is onboarding. So ETBs are more revenue generating customers for financial institutions. Yes, actually, so are NTBs, but it's about balancing the focus. First of all, it's about introducing the focus towards ETBs, and then balancing the focus, because eventually you should be getting NTBs through ETB referrals. That's good business. But and that's what the eventual goal should be. And that's so. Ata, like Hafsa said, you get it, and we're pleased to hear that, to have your comment, and I'm sure you will be working in your organization to work on ETBs as well as valuable NTBs.
And you'll get your NTBs through your ETBs. So that's the best part, right? So your
Correct.
NTB target will be met very easily if you take care of your ETBs and develop that very good, no like trust relationship with them. They will come and tell you, please, this is our friend. Please open his account. This is my sister, brother. So you will get your NTBs by taking care of your ETBs. That is the best formula for
That's right.
NTBs.
That's
So,
the formula for retail business. Retail
yes.
business is about repeat sales and referrals. That's how you build an efficient and robust, fast growing retail business. Shall we take Najib's comment and have Faisal?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, Najib has a comment before that about the ultimate goal of each compliance measure. So,
Yeah.
no, Najib's comment.
No. So Najib's
It's
was,
right. Right. There you go.
yes, this one. The ultimate
So,
goal of each compliance measure should never be forgotten. That
right.
is consumer protection.
Right.
Compliance should never be turned into an end, but should always be a means to an end.
I mean,
Right.
absolutely, Najib, this is music to my ears.
Hmm.
Not just because I have been handling compliance responsibilities, but this is exactly what the message to the business people should be. There is a sort of, sometimes I feel, a tension or an adversarial sort of relationship between compliance and the business, or compliance versus the rest of the bank. uh, I mean, absolutely. If the compliance responsibilities are not handled properly by the business people and by the operations people, then obviously there are going to be reputational risks involved. And once the bank or any organization loses its reputation or is damaged in terms of reputation, then, as we all know, that it is very, very difficult to rebuild that reputation. Secondly, from even a customer service point of view, when we talk about compliance and controls, the customers hopefully now are gradually starting to understand that it is for their benefit as well, it is for their safety as well. So, for example, if a certain control is introduced in a process which prevents frauds, okay, it is for the customer's benefit as well. Okay. um, and then in the last session, I talked about not only KYC, but I said that it should actually be construed as actually understand your customer and engage your customers. So if the business people start viewing KYC or CDD, from that angle, it would actually build bridges between compliance and the rest of the bank as well. So I hope I've answered your question to some extent.
Yes, I think very, very comprehensive. Um, Thank you, Faisal, for that. We have Ijaz Saab is here, and he has a question. He says, "I repeat, what services are banks offering to protect the value of deposits of their customers in this high inflation and devaluation period?" Right now, that is a very interesting question. Um, so, Ijaz Saab, I think. If I may, banks have been focused in the past primarily to generate deposits to fund their balance sheets. And, um, you know, customers with large deposits are generally able to negotiate better prices for themselves because the banks are interested in keeping those large deposits with them. But here we're talking about retail customers, not just the largely retail customers, but what we call the the mass affluent and mass and the retail customers. They generate actually just as much value for the bank. And the banks, even though they have products at times, we find that they are not as, if I may, aggressive uh, in offering those products to the customers. For example, they have funds of different sorts. Um, they have money market based funds, balance funds, equity based funds for different sorts of customers with risk appetites and different risk appetites, and they can be offered these products. These products can be offered to customers for them to be able to protect the value of their funds. So I think banks have products. It's how we were talking about KPIs, and how the KPI actually fits into business development, but also to customer service. And if the KPI did that, these products and services would automatically be offered to the customer. Well, let me not be like that, but uh, banks need to look at not being one product oriented at one time. They need to be multi product oriented, actually be customer need focused, and present them with products and services to fulfill their needs. If they do that, then you will find that any customer talking about protecting the value of their assets and deposits will be offered these products automatically. I
Thank
hope
you.
I've answered this question.
So we have one more question I'd like to take from Najib, and then we'll move on. So
Ji.
Najib says bank tellers
Hmm.
yeah. So bank tellers engage with the bulk of the customers and non-customers and play a very critical role. How can their role be enhanced with training, etc., so that they can also contribute to cross-selling and business development? It's a great question, Najib, and this reminds me that I read somewhere some bank, I'm forgetting the name, not in Pakistan. They said that anybody who wants to enter this bank, this is a big bank, I've forgotten this role, the starting entry point is the
Hmm.
teller. That is the foot in the door in the bank. So every person that enters will come as a teller. He or she will work there for a year, 2 years, and then there was a whole career path. So if that teller is good in service, he or she will move into the operations line. If they feel that they have the sales skill set, they will move into the sales. And I thought that was great. So that was like a whole career path. So it was not that a teller is counting cash for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years. It's just not that. So I think that the training, yes, of course, but more so I think if we think about it strategically again and make it a process, and that's what we're talking about today, a process that every person so that can enter in. That's the first port of call, because you are engaging with customers. You get the bank evaluates you, you evaluate the bank, and then your career is there. So that is one thing that came to my mind. Salman and Faisal, I'm happy to have you add to that.
Faisal?
Yeah, I would say that I've not seen this issue for the first time. I think during my career as well, we have been debating on this possibility, uh, and I think for some time, and at least in some banks, bank tellers were also given business development targets. Unfortunately, that experiment failed. But if you would allow me, and I would like to actually mention some inconvenient truths here. Okay, what is the current state of any teller, or rather teller function? I think in most of the banks, if there is a shortage of cash, then the tellers personally basically uh, uh, basically
Has
recover the
account.
money, or they actually fill in that shortage of cash, right? I think that's probably the case in, if not most, then in many of the banks. And in one of the banks in Pakistan that I work for, at least not for the core, bank, but for its subsidiary, I refused to sign a document which contained their SOPs, because again, it actually basically said that the responsibility for recovering, or the responsibility for cash shortages, will be personally with the tellers. And on my insistence, they actually changed it, and then they said that okay, it will be debited to the P&L account, not to the teller. So when such is the state of affairs of the tellers, and still in a very cash oriented economy where the tellers, they have to count millions and millions of rupees, do you think that the teller will be able to fulfill any business development responsibilities as well as we see them here in let's say Canada? When I go to a bank for my transaction at the teller counters, the teller invariably, after doing my transaction in let's say less than a minute actually, because these are very small transactions which are handled very efficiently, and these hardly involve any cash. So after that, that lady or the gentleman at the teller counter, they start cross-selling me, and I have been roped in many times, into
Yes.
some of the products that I had not wanted, you know, uh, although I'm a former banker. So such are their cross-selling skills, and such are their business development targets. So I think, I mean, the idea is good. I mean, as I've said, that we see that in many of the developed countries, but in our kind of economy, do you think that the time is right for that? I mean, apart from just extending the common courtesies, interacting with the client with a smile and with a helpful look, which is increasingly, I would say, going down. The teller does not even say Assalamu alaikum or good morning in most of the teller counters that I've been to in Pakistan. So that small aspect can actually be covered by training. But about business development and cross selling of banks products, I'm not sure if it is feasible in our kind of environment. I mean, on one hand, the teller has to meet very stretch targets with regard to the key service indicators or KPIs, and on the other hand, if he's expected to handle some business development targets, then I think it's not ideal to actually go for that route.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Is that yes, yes,
I,
Jeevan,
I just have a point
Gigi.
there. Um, I think I agree with Faisal. And Faisal has talked about Canada. The caliber of the people
Mm.
actually serving at the teller there is very different. At times, you find the caliber there that we've seen are relationship manager caliber people who come to the teller and will serve you and then will move on and become relationship managers at a later stage. So they have the potential to grow. There's another reality here also that we are profiling our tellers by the pay that we are offering. So we attract obviously a certain sort of profile, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, because we require that tellers um, just to do teller transactions as well. But if I was to sort of just introduce a very simple concept, not to sell, but just but there's a concept that the bankers understand called kia. क्या आपको पता है, क्या आपको हमारे डेबिट कार्ड के बारे में पता है, and the person says nahi ji nahi pata, but kya, and then would you like to know more, haan ji, inse milne, so they don't need to really get involved
Yeah,
in selling. Just introduce the product as you reactively sell, and just one line, that's it. And if the customer gets converted, you get part of the commission.
yeah.
So the teller is also encouraged to say that on an ongoing basis. So these sorts of simple things in our environment should work, and I think they should be implemented as a process, so that
Yes.
every customer that comes in is there are in a branch with 100 customers visiting every day. In a month, you're talking about 22 days. You're talking about 2,200 visits a day. Now, some of these customers are not really customers. Some of the runners, etc. But even if you put a 1 to 3% conversion rate to introduction of product being converted eventually into a buying, an act of buying, that's a huge number that the bank kind of misses out by not putting this process in.
Absolutely.
But
So,
yeah,
G.
And I think Vakar again has got it right. He
Right.
says you commission the cross sell and tellers will start selling. So that's the same thing. So you incentivize, but you so behavior change is also driven by incentive, but the right incentives. So yes, whether it is cross sell or whether Vakar, it is only you're developing a relationship with the teller that you can even get NTBs referral from the teller as well. So if there is a regular customer that the teller really likes and he greets you well, so you can actually the teller can also say that, sir or madam, if you really like my service, is there any family member that you would like to refer, to have their accounts opened with us as well. So these are all part of contact points with customers, which we can put in a process again and use for the bank's advantage as well. So whether it is to sell to that customer or cross sell, or it is to solicit NTBs. So I with that I have my eye on the time. Our time unfortunately is up. We have some more questions. We would have loved to take them. Thank you so much for sending them in. Ata, Vakar, we have
Deep.
Ijaz Saab, Najib, Nadeem. I just
Mm.
want to thank everybody, Charlene for attending, and all of those who have not yet commented but still attended. So we meet next time with my favorite pillar, of course, which is people. So I think we will have a lot to talk about in that pillar, because that is the pillar that ties it all together.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Anything from Salman before we wrap up, or Faisal?
Mm. Faisal?
well, I would just like to say maybe two sentences about the tellers,
Okay.
since that was the subject of discussion for the last 2 3 minutes. Okay. Um, Basically, I would like to say that the tellers are already contributing to bringing in incremental business. It is their service. Okay, if they meet their service indicators and can delight a customer by providing them best in class service, not only just greeting them with a smile and with courtesy, but also handling their transactions efficiently and accurately, then obviously, I mean, that can also result in a customer bringing in repeat business as well. Because if the
Yeah.
customer is not satisfied with the customer service, no matter how many times you call him or her, engage with that customer, he's not going to basically increase his business with the bank.
I just have to Faisal's point. I just have one more point to add, and brings it back to the process. If, as a process, we we capacitize the branch properly as a process, and tellers are handling a load that they can handle. So we're not short on tellers. And if that's the case, number two, we are actually training the tellers for attitude, for efficiently doing their doing their work. Um, as a process, then when we put in something like just introduce through a one liner, and if we reward them through a service quality management program that says, okay, every time a teller says something, interacts, with a customer in a way that delights the customer, give them, a thumbs up award.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are the processes that need to be put in. Like you said, Hafsa, they're there. They've been talked about. Uh, what what needs to be done is the rigor with which these processes are run, relentless, and the rigor with which senior management, as a process, uh, meets and talks about how are we doing, how are we doing the business, how are the processes running. Is there a service quality management board, for example? Is there a business development senior management team, which includes senior most management? that sits and reviews. Okay, are we planning properly? Are we delivering properly? Are the, are the, is the business planning process, the KPIs, the capacitization, is that good enough? That's what needs to become the center of senior management meetings. I know there are board meetings, and boards need to be satisfied with their numbers, etc., whatever they need to look at. But these are the sort of things that when the management starts to do, it goes back to the board
Yeah.
through the committees, and the board starts to evolve in their thinking as well. So I think, the business should be customer centric. And if all the processes are then developed around that, like we've spoken about, I think it changes the entire processes, build an organization's culture. So if you've got processes embedded, good processes embedded, and then that will help building culture in an organization. I believe that.
Okay, so thank you very much again. This is a topic which we could go on talking about. It's exciting. It's very relevant, and as you talked about, it's the DNA of an organization or the culture. And we'll pick up this thread, inshallah, when we meet next time, because we're talking about people. So we'll pick up the piece of capacity, capacitization on the branches, and then how can we make it more effective, and we will link the people back to the processes and the portfolio in our people webinar. So once again, thank you for everybody who's joined us, and have a great evening and a great day to Faisal, and see you next time, inshallah. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Khudafez.
Dafis, thank you.